Part 5. Right, so these two individuals, I think it's David Rockefeller and Nicholas Rothschild, are talking to the members of the UN, to our Prime Minister, to our elected representatives, and they're inventing, they've got a memorandum of understanding between these two private individuals, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers of the world, and themselves, the government. And the reason why they've abused us, bankrupted us, corrupted us, is because the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds of the world have lent the government money to persecute their wars. I'd love to see what the cost of World War II was in financial terms for the world. But it built America as we know it today, because America was not damaged by the war. Don't get this. Don't believe the hype that the Allies defeated the Germans and the fascists in World War II. They didn't. American business destroyed fascism. They built the guns, the bombs, the airplanes, the ships, the guns, the rifles, the ammunition. And people like DuPont built the bombs, invented the gunpowder that they put in the bombs. The Navy then shipped the bombs from America to Britain, and then from Britain they dropped the bombs onto Dresden, for example. And DuPont is part of the global elite. They're part of the corporate structure of the world. They're a player. And they monopolised all the gunpowder, for example. Right, so the corporates own the world. They own the factories, they own the refineries, they own the drilling rigs, they own the tools that we use to build this world as we know it today. They've colluded, they've developed contracts, they've developed business with the government to supply goods and services to themselves. So the way I see it is that the corporates say, oh yeah, I want to build these. Right? You need one of these for your business. You need one of these for storing the data about your tax. So we'll build you the computers. We'll develop the software that you need to tax people. You need proper accountancy and all that kind of stuff. Right? So the corporates said, okay, we'll lend you the money so that you can fight fascism in the 30s. What they didn't tell you was that these same corporate industries, like IBM, like DuPont, and all the other industries that we had at the time, were lending the Germans and Adolf Hitler the same money. So America built the bombs that we shipped to Britain, and then the British dropped them on places like Dresden. But they didn't tell you that these same corporates were helping Hitler build his blitzkrieg. And this is probably the same ammunition that we dropped on Dresden, the Nazis dropped on London. Probably the same ammunition. Now, the evidence is out there. I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but the point is that they were paying both sides of the conflict. They did the same for Wellington and Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars. They did the same for the Chinese to help the VC in Vietnam in the 60s. They lent the Chinese money to build guns and ammunition, push bikes and all that kind of stuff. The Chinese sold those push bikes to the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong then used the bikes to persecute the war in Vietnam, to defend themselves. I mean, I saw this video the other day, and one kid that died in the Vietnam War said, we're not going to win this war. He was American. And he was right, because they'd already fixed it So that America drops 1 million tons of bombs on the Vietnam. And who made those bombs? DuPont and the other American corporates. So they're paying themselves to build bombs so that they can drop them on places like Vietnam. And a recent example is Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that. So you've got a picture of this government corporate autocracy, it's dictatorship, telling the government how to run government, because they've bankrupted us, because they've abused us, because they've corrupted the system. So that when the corporates say to the government minister for energy, we don't like that idea, the government listens. Because the government have borrowed so heavily from the Federal Reserve System that all of our tax is going off to pay off these loans. Now, there's 661.4 million people in Britain right at this moment, and we're paying on average £25,000 a year. We are paid £25,000 a year, and out of that, at least 30% of it goes directly in tax. Then you've got 11% national insurance, 17.5% VAT, and so on and so on. So you could work out that it comes to about 97% of our income is going to the government in various forms of tax. And tax is going to the corporates to pay off the loans that the government borrowed to persecute their wars, to buy their staplers for their offices, to buy bits of metal and stuff from China. So China obviously benefits because it gets jobs for its staff, its employees, and China gets an income and becomes the fourth richest economy when 5 years ago that was Britain. So there's the reality of the world is that the corporates own the government, and the government are in debt to the corporates because the corporates made so much money out of World War II by buying these bombs, making these bombs, dropping the bomb, because it's a constant cost. Drop a bomb, you've got to replace it. And unless you have no war, you can't drop a bomb. I mean, yeah, you could have test flights and, oh, I'm going to test a bomb in the Bikini Islands. Oh, it's the biggest bomb we've ever made. That's fair. That's fair enough. You've tested it. You've given it a test. You've proved the theory that it works. But unless you've got a war, you can't carry on making these bombs. You've got to stop making these bombs. And I'm getting a bit off topic here, but the fundamental part is that the government have a requirement to build these bombs because they've made the policy that we need an army to stop the Russians from invading us, even though the same bankers were paying both the Russians and the Americans for the Cold War. Right? You look at humanitarian aid, right? And it's mad. It's mad. So the corporates have lent the money to the government. The government have promised the corporates that they will repay the loans. And the only asset that the government have got is you and me. From the income tax that we pay, from the fuel duty that we pay, from all the other taxes we pay, that generates an income, that generates revenue. And then the government can then offset the interest against that income, and the income then pays off the loan. Mad. So we need fundamental reform of government and that relationship between corporate and government. Right, I'm going to stop it there and see you in a minute.